people like me from previous months, okay? Total control. Bing, bing, bong, bong, bing, 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 bong, bing, bing, bong. When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. And I said, we need to build a wall. And nobody builds walls better than me, believe me. I'm gonna bomb the shit out of them. We will make America great again.
Grab him by the pussy.
I don't care. China's killing us. We need to build a wall.
My father gave me a small loan of $1 million.
Fake news, folks. God bless you and good night. I love you.
Yeah, I love that short little tune. It's one of my favorite ones. Let me stop this. How you doing today, Common Sense Guy? What's happening in merry old England?
Not too much, just lots and lots of rain as pure and normal, so lots and lots of fun and lots of dampness, and not in a good way. Not in a good way at all. Yeah, got Nigel Farage that said little bits and pieces about North Korea at the moment, so that's not too bad. I know how much you love Nigel Farage over there.
I love Nigel. My prize rooster is named after him, mate. Nigel is my prize rooster. No kidding. Nigel Farage is his name. He's my favorite politician in the world. Maybe Boris is a close second.
I'd go for that, to be honest. I quite like Nigel Farage. I like how he was just a straight talker. He didn't seem to take any bull either. The way that he battled to get Brexit through as well, even to just get the referendum, was absolutely amazing. How we managed to get a referendum through when the Conservatives at the time were keep on promising it, like after election, and he just managed to get it through. I mean, some people say, "Oh, he hasn't achieved anything from it." You look at that and you go, "Well, to the Conservative Party that didn't even want to do anything with Brexit whatsoever, had it on in their manifesto for 2 consecutive elections, and then had to eventually go through half an election term, and then have to actually do a referendum. Hence why, obviously, David Cameron left, and then Margaret Thatcher. No, sorry, May took over.
Yeah, well, Margaret, I don't even want to get into that. I'm sure that was a joke, but Margaret Thatcher, I have my own opinions. I thought she was great. Theresa May is no Margaret Thatcher. But
She's definitely not.
Final thing, Camp Barrage to Farage. I love that shit, Centipede. And I watched all those. But it's funny to me because my 2 favorite politicians in the world are both British. But that's just the way it stands right now. A close third is Donald Trump. He's just slipped. He was my favorite until he became a real politician. And then when he became a real one, it's like I had to put him in light of some of these other guys I look up to, and he's no longer first. But you can't beat Boris. I heard him asked. They were like, "So Boris, the worry is, if you become prime minister, are you gonna make love with every beautiful woman in Britain?" And his answer was, "What do you mean, again?"
Yeah, that's definitely Boris.
Yeah, I was like, "Yeah, Boris, tell him, boy." He went even unapologetically too. Of course, he chuckled after that, but
To be honest, my favourite quote is to do with Brexit at the moment, when it came back that we were supposed to pay 50 billion or something, and he stood up in the House of Commons and he goes, "Brussels can go whistle for it." And I thought that was one of the most British things that he could say.
Yeah. Well, you lot need more like that in control, in my humble opinion. I mean, you need more people that are going to say, Britannia first, Britannia second, Britannia last.
Yeah. We don't get that. It's Europe first, Europe second, and then Britannia's last at the moment.
Mirth. Yeah, and as I want to laugh too, it just makes my heart hurt. I mean, y'all have been around for a century.
No.
Excuse me, a millennia, I should have said, is what I meant to say. Century. Yeah, right. You got pubs that have been around for a lot longer than a century.
Yeah, definitely. I think the oldest pub was built in 14 something or other down near I think Jamaica Inn is one of the most oldest pubs in England.
Well, and that's the oldest one still standing. I mean, y'all had pubs for 1,000 years around there. Y'all invented Y'all invented a sport that I kind of enjoy called gurning. Do you know what that is?
Unfortunately, no. I'm not sure if I have an idea, and I don't want to embarrass myself. I'm sure the British will do.
British, do you know what gurning is?
Gurning. It's the art of pulling faces.
Yeah, really. They put like a horse collar, a little horse collar around their neck, and they.
Yes, I believe there is a gurning world championship in the county of Cumbria. Yes.
Oh dear.
So I always remember this whenever it comes to comedy and whatnot, because apparently the legend goes that gurning started by some lads were outside of the pub, 500-600 years ago, having a pint, get some fresh air, and the village idiot came along. And it was like, I want a pint with you boys. And they were like, yeah, pull a face. We'll buy you a pint.
Well, I think it tends to be won by people who don't have any teeth.
Oh, or it can pop them out.
Yeah, because they can kind of do more extreme movements with their jaws in kind of overlapping lips and things like that. So yes, I think it tends to be the toothless who tend to win this one.
Well, I'm not much of a judge of masculine beauty, but I will say the last gurning champion that I'm aware of, I'm not sure that he's won or lost or how long ago it was really in my memory that I've seen this. I know he won 2 years in a row, was not an ugly dude, had all of his teeth, was like a weightlifter, but he had worked a way to just screw his face up, man. And when he did it, the question was inevitably asked of him, well, is it easy to do? And you can see when he's working himself up, popping everything out, making his eyes bug and whatnot, that it takes a certain amount of, I can't help but laugh, but it takes a certain amount of effort. And that was his answer.
More than likely, people must have told him he was pulling faces when he was lifting weights.
That's what I
just
think.
Basically, he must have basically taken it one step further from that, by the sound of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how much can I gloat about your new acquisition, Brett?
Oh, my new computer. Well, yes, I have now got a new computer, even though I am still actually speaking on the old one. Because, of course, it takes that much setting up. It's one of those dreary things whereby every few years when you get yourself a new machine, you're desperately trying to remember the various passwords for pieces of software.
Oh, Lord.
And yes, it's one of those. So eventually I will kind of fight my way through it, but I could well imagine that for the next few days I might actually still be on the old one.
Well, but the machine that you described to me, you won't be getting a new one in 3 years, is my bet. I mean, you got
it's a fairly powerful machine, yes. So hopefully this one,
it's i7.
Barring any disasters, it should hold together.
Now, how large is the solid state hard drive, the SSD?
I think it's a 256.
Yeah. Okay. So it's a quarter tear. So just remember this, Brett. They probably told you at the computer store you can set things to be stored in different areas, and you want all your programs to basically to be on that SSD because it runs so much faster. But the videos that you store later, you can force it to send to your regular your spinning.
Yeah, as I say, these are things I kind of still need to work out for myself.
Yeah, I try to help you, but I'm not that great unless I'm right there in front of it, man, and then work at it for hours.
But yeah, it really is one of those things that is a bit like pulling teeth, kind of setting yourself up again, and then you get comfortable with it, and then a few years go by, and eventually you need a new machine, and then you're desperately trying to remember all these things again. It's one of them, I'm afraid.
Oh, man.
Yeah, definitely agree with that.
I got all my passwords written down in the same place that Mrs. Ogre, she actually gets the thing out when I got a new password, I'll write down, she goes and puts it away. I'm pretty sure, I know it's in her filing cabinet. I'm pretty sure I could find it. But I don't even fool with that kind of thing. I haven't forgotten or lost a password in 23 years because of Mrs.
Ogre. There you go. See, it's always good to have backup. Yes.
Well, we have all our taxes from the day we met all the way up to now. You're supposed to get rid of that stuff like every 7 years, just like old girlfriends. And she
I'm not referring to the actual files as being the backup. I think it's definitely Mrs. Ogre who's the backup.
Oh, I get it. I'm just trying to glaze over that and move on. I just was in a discussion earlier because I was on the Honey Badgers, in my mind, of course, because you know how I think of everything British, I whistle past the graveyard no matter what. So I was thinking, well, this would be the beginning of a great relationship, man. I'll probably be on their show many, many times. Never been asked back on, because it came up. For one, I was ridiculed because I always wore a suit on camera back then, and if I'm on a big show, I'm going to wear I had a suit on, so apparently that's bad to the MRAs. And then this discussion came up.
Sorry, come again. Having a suit on is bad to the men's rights.
I'm looking in the comments, Britt. I don't know, but I'm looking in the comments, and it was like, well, what do you expect, Ogre? Because I said something to the effect of, somebody was like, well, you keep answering back all these, everything said about you. I was like, well, yeah, if you were getting bashed like this, wouldn't you answer it back? You know me. Wouldn't you answer it back? And then somebody answered that like, well, what did you expect, dude? You came on an MRA advocate show, men's rights advocate show, with a big beard and a suit and tie and a cowboy hat, which, you know, the funny joke on them is it's not a cowboy hat, it's a lady's sun hat. And and what I did was I mentioned that I make money, but I don't see any of it, mate. I mean, I give all the money that I make to Mrs. Ogre. All the money she makes, she keeps. But when I say I give to her, I mean, she does. I can get money. I mean, I have access to money. But I am told how much and in what period of time I can spend said amount. Why? Because I want some more money later. You know, I want to be able to do that.
Delayed gratification.
Ad infinitum. Well, it's usually not delayed gratification. It's more of just telling a maniac like myself, you can't buy toys every week, and you know you have this much money to spend every week, or we won't have anything when we get old. And so I mentioned that. And it was like, oh, so you give, and man, I mean, gracious, just because I said, and then I made the point, well, some people, women are better at multitasking. That's a scientific, empirically proved fact.
Yeah, but not to MRAs, it's not.
Oh man, I had no idea what I was walking into.
So effectively, what actually would they have wanted? I mean, rather than the suit and tie,
they wanted Stranahan. They wanted me to be the male version of Stranahan, Karen Stranahan. You know, girl
I'm not familiar with Stranahan.
Girl writes what?
Okay, yes.
They wanted me to be that.
Okay, so you weren't, at least you weren't expected to kind of appear on camera like Conan the Barbarian.
If I would have pulled a beard,
dragging a woman along by her hair, whilst making sure that everybody knew that you were in charge and that you were the man. I don't know. I find it rather interesting, you know, the way they say that they would object to a suit, because, I mean, surely that has got absolutely nothing to do with it. But, well, there you go.
Well, and
MRA sound more like MGTOWs.
If you were going to go on a program knowing, while we were right in the program, I mean, I can see how many people were watching. There were 1,500 people watching us at one time. 20-some thousand people have seen that video. I mean, if you were going to be on camera, would you show up with a wife beater on like Karen Stranahan and look like you just got done shooting some b-ball or something? Or would you kind of want to look maybe your best?
You definitely would want to look your best.
Yeah, one would think that one would aim high. But yeah, no, I just find that remarkable, that someone should in any way object to you wearing a suit.
Yeah, well, and that wasn't it, mate. It got down to it.
I know why. They got triggered because they were going to court. Now I know why.
They got triggered because it came up that I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky. And in Louisville, Kentucky in 1979, if somebody molested you and you were my age, I was never molested, but I knew kids. If somebody was fooling with you, your dad, anybody, they had to get caught in the act. A child saying something meant nothing. We all knew it. It wouldn't even be. And then they came out and they said, well, the laws have always been there. I said, yes. If one of the adults would have said that there is something going on, the cops would have came in and they would have prosecuted them. There were prisoners at the time and there were people in prison for child molestation, of course. But getting to that point, and then right away, one of the girls was like, you're wrong. And I was like, no, I'm not wrong. You know me, Brit. I bulldogged over her because I was in the middle of the thought, being yelled at that I was wrong. And then I continued to say, and then I ended it saying this. And besides that, I can't be wrong because this is anecdotal evidence based on my subjective views. So anyway, but anyway, that was way too much talk about the honey badgers. I still watch their stuff. I'm upset because the short, little, chunky, red-haired one wasn't on that day, and that's the one that I kind of wanted to meet. And now I don't think the opportunity for that has came and passed. As it were.
What you are saying is that you had an ulterior motive.
Well, no ulterior motive. She's married and whatnot. She's just so cute. And what I did is when I first started doing this, I came up with the idea that I would do a without looking at response. So somebody sent me the idea for the honey badgers, and I put up this little short, chunky, little red-haired Canadian girl, and she was talking about Islam, and I thought she was going to be an apologist. And it turned out that where I thought I was going to have a lot to disagree with her on, nope, she was talking about Hegelian dialectic and all of these things, and we really agreed on it. So that's how I think I got on the show. Oh, what's her name? I can't believe I can't remember her name. Abigail, Aiden, something like that. Anyway, enough about the freaking honey badgers already. Your new computer is what I'm excited about, because I am looking forward to this show. Everybody should start to know and tell your friends that this show is going to start to revolve. And there will be some time in the future, be it 10 years or 10 days. Lily, no. Be it 10 years or 10 days. And, you know, we should be doing some time over there. So I'm really looking for, everybody knows I'm a glory whore. So I'm really looking forward to when we're at the Britishers channel. And look, I appreciate all 9 of y'all out here in the thing. I feel like a lot of our crowds that we get in here for a channel with under 1,000 subs is really, really phenomenal. I see people with 3,000 subs that got 4 people watching them for 2 hours. So I'm really, really happy about. Anyway, that's my long-winded way of saying, look for, and when you get a chance, encourage the Britisher without pestering him, folks, to take that plunge into the deep end, as it were, and be the main host, I guess is what you'd say, because we're co-hosts. How was that, Brit? That's making you. Are you ready?
I'll say that the plan is there. We will eventually sort of be doing some streams from my channel. I think the first thing I need to do is kind of get this machine up and running, and then hopefully we should be ready to kind of, see the Britisher as a complete bundle of nerves once again, in the same fashion as he was when he first came on the Ogre's channel to do some live streaming, which was a bit like pulling teeth at the time.
The only person that knew that was you and I, though. No one else knew that. Everybody thought that you came well prepared and had no jitters whatsoever.
Well, I remember sort of having to try to start sentences about 15 times in a row before eventually I got on a roll. But it was definitely a bit of a leap. But I think the common sense guy can confirm this, that once you start anything with YouTube, with the channel, it becomes a very steep learning curve very quickly.
It does. It really, really does. As soon as you do your first video and you think, oh, I've done really well on that, and then you rewatch it, and then you compare it to somebody else who's been doing it a lot longer, and you're just like, oh my God, I've got so many things that are wrong with this. I need to go over this again. Then you try and do it again. Then you do your second video, and you're like, okay, this is a bit better. And then you compare it again, and you're just like, no, I need to carry on. And as you said, when you first start live streams, it does get to you a little bit. When you don't know when to stop or when to start or how to get yourself into an actual conversation.
Well, he knows all that now. And I miss the days, because the first probably 2 weeks that I did this, I would get like butterflies. That's why I started playing music and stuff that I've done in my life. In fact, when that feeling goes, then it just becomes like everything else. It's just routine. But so I guess that may be where we're different, Brett. I miss the days when it was a nervy experience.
It was a tightrope act.
Yeah, I do miss that.
At any moment, it could go disastrously wrong. Yes.
Well, but what could possibly go wrong? I mean, we're just having fun on YouTube. I mean, there's a little red button down here that I can see. It says stop broadcast. Heck, one time you weren't here, Brett. I did a stream and we had Sarge over. I had Sarge over. He brought this oil. I smoked some of this oil and I got so stoned. I think he was in the middle of saying something. I just reached over. I was sitting on the couch. I just reached over him, grabbed the mouse, and clicked stop broadcast. And then I'll tell you what I did after that. I looked at him and said, I'm going to bed, man. And that's what I did. So, I mean, what could possibly go wrong? Not really go wrong.
Yes,
Yeah,
one
I'm
could
quite
only get-
happy on that one.
One could only get one could only get that stoned that eventually one doesn't really know where one's head is anymore. So luckily, one could still identify the little red button at the time.
Oh, I was paranoid. I was so high. I was paranoid, is what they call it. You know, I got to where I was thinking too much about my heartbeat. It's just
Yeah, it was a bit like that moment in what is it, The Big Bang Theory, when they're all, they're all rather plastered with it, having. If I remember rightly, they had consumed some either some cookies or muffins or something like that had got marijuana in them. And they completely end up stoned out of their skulls. And I think at one point, Raj suddenly deduces that he can feel the world turning under him, and that it's turning too fast. Until eventually Leonard tries, by the sheer power of his mind, to slow the world down.
probably worked. I don't remember that episode, but did it work?
Yes, yeah. According to Raj, it did. Yes,
Of course it did. And listen, Britt, when you try marijuana for the first time in your life, don't eat it. I mean, that's a stark warning too, because you can have somebody that smoked marijuana for years. When you eat marijuana, it goes through your liver and it becomes THC delta 10, I think, from delta 9. It changes slightly in its makeup, and I'm gonna tell you what, it's not for the faint of heart. It's just
a much stronger effect, is it?
Much stronger effect. And the strongest part, the thing that becomes the strongest, is this feeling. They call it paranoia, but it's a feeling of impending doom. There's no other way to say it.
Anxiety of sorts. Yeah,
very much. You'll start thinking about your heart rate. Am I breathing right? Oh my goodness, I'm going to die. That seems to be the reoccurring theme. And it says, yes, when you do try it, don't eat it.
No, I've got a little story on that one. When I've tried it once before, I was walking down my local high street after I've ingested.
This, of course, was when you were in. This was, of course, when you were in the Netherlands.
Yes, indeed.
Of course, or in one of those states in the United States of America where it is medicinally available.
Of course,
I was somewhere where it was legal. I'm not sure where, but I was somewhere where it was legal. But I was walking down main high street, and I was walking past the traffic lights, and they were pedestrianised. So, obviously, British, they've got the red man for stop and the green man for go.
Unless you're in London, yes.
Yeah, and I looked at the green man because it was to go, and in my stoned head, the man got out of the light and chased me. So I'm running down the middle of the high street, and I get to the bottom of the high street, and there's 2 police officers there at the bottom of it. And I'm saying to these police officers, there is a green man that is following me. There is a green man that is chasing me and following me. And they look at me and they just go, "Are you okay to get home?" And I just went, "Yeah, I'm going to run, but I'll be all right." And I was just like, that's fine. And they just left me to my own demented.
well, of course,
the Dutch police are very well known for being laid back in that respect.
Any police, man, unless you got some officer with a stick jammed sideways. I mean, I think I've told the story, but I was in New York and I was trying to get on the subway, and an officer came up to help me figure out how to get my pass for the day. It was myself and 3 other people there, Mrs. Ogre and 2 other people. Anyway, he was like, get $5 out. And when he said that, I reached in my pocket to grab my wad of money. And when I pulled it out, I just pulled out a big ounce of pot with the money. It was like, and I didn't get it all the way out, but it was like halfway to my pocket. And I looked at it like this. I mean, I looked up at him like this. I moved my hand. He looked down at that and he was like, "Get your $5 out of your pocket. Put it in the machine." In other words, he just couldn't be bothered with the fact that I just whipped it out in front of him. Couldn't be bothered with it.
I think at that point he realised that you weren't going to be a problem.
These sounds like sort of, Cheech and Chong the sequel episodes, don't they?
Oh no, that really happened. I mean, Mrs. Ogre, she chastised me. I never accidentally. I always kept my money and my weed in 2 different pockets, because when you get stoned, I mean, you get fumble-minded. It's like you don't think about shit. I mean it. I just obviously wasn't thinking about stuff. I just jammed my. He's telling me. I mean, the whole thing was we're trying to $4 to get the thing, and he wanted to go through his spiel that he'd obviously practiced. and it was put the $5 in, and you get the golden dollar back then. It had Sacagawea on it. And the only thing, what he was thinking was not this moron's carrying an ounce and whipping it out in front of me. He was thinking this moron just messed up my spiel. I can't be bothered with doing the paperwork for this dumb hippie whipping out some plot. Anyway.
I must ask, common sense guy, you know, when I mentioned about the traffic lights in London not having the little green man on it, did you realize, did you know what I was referring to there?
No.
Well, you see, in London, I mean, obviously, most of the traffic lights have the little green man, but some of them in the city centre, I think it was last year, were changed for gay pride. So that they had all sorts of transgender signs and whatever instead of the little green man. And then, of course, that was supposed to only be for Pride Month. But this is one of these problems with virtue signaling, that once you do it, even though you only do it temporarily, then the act of undoing it becomes a crime in itself.
Yes, you're now bigoted.
So then, of course, there was the pressure to, oh, well, you can't take it down now, because if you take them down, then you are kind of forcing normality back onto people. So then, of course, Sadiq Khan, in his heroic guise, as we all know him, then
happy days for him.
No, they're going to stay. So now, if you are in the city centre of London, there are some crossings. I believe they're around Trafalgar Square. I haven't seen them myself. I've only seen photographs of them and such like, with kind of the symbol for male is the little circle, the kind of the Volvo signal, the sign, if you know. Then the one for female is with a little cross under the circle. So they've got kind of transgender signs of that, and they've got also gay signs where you've got two circles with arrows that are intertwined and things like that. It has apparently caused some confusion, whereby some tourists just don't understand what it's supposed to mean, because they're standing there saying, well, where are the little green and the little red man?
Yeah, that's what I learned when I come in when I was doing my tourist thing, and now I come into this little area, and oh, you've messed everything up, and I have no idea what I'm doing, and I'm going to get hit by a red bus. Thank you very much.
Along those lines, yes. But of course, one cannot remove them now because that would be homophobic or transphobic.
Yes, you would be very bigoted for removing it now.
Yes,
you'd be horribly bigoted.
So it will now be interesting to see, once the immortal reign of Sadiq Khan ends, what the next person might do. I mean, obviously, London is now this kind of super liberal place, so we don't really know whether it can ever change, or whether they have to actually take the entire traffic lights out by the route and replace them with others, if you know what I mean, as opposed to just changing the little facings.
No, but, if Sadiq Khan's still mayor, it won't get changed.
I just thought I would ask you in case you didn't know what I was actually talking about there, because it is a little story in itself. The fact that one should have gone to such lengths to virtue signal that we now have transsexual traffic lights. Yes.
And they probably got more rights than most straight men have.
Yeah, the transsexual traffic light can't join the US military.
God damn it.
Then again, the way things are going with, the North Koreans and the Americans likely to start throwing missiles and bombs at each other very soon, perhaps now is not the time to be in the US military. What do you think, Mr.
I don't agree.
I wouldn't want to be in the military right now, no. But, well, I'll take that back. When I was 19, I signed up because of all the stuff that was going on in the early 90s with the Gulf War. And, I mean, I just told the story, so I'm not going to get all into it about what I scored and whatnot. But they were trying to push me to do something else. But my intention was to go in Airborne Ranger. I wanted my AIT, my Advanced Individual Training, to be jump school, was to be airborne. In other words, but they prevailed on me, and I was going to go in and be do road clearing heavy equipment. Anyway, make a long story short, man, they scared me so bad in there. I had an unpaid speeding ticket in Florida when I did this, and they just drilled into my head that, after that whole ordeal, when I told them, yeah, I got a ticket before I was swore in, I just wasn't willing to go through all that again, let alone, I'm sure if I would have went into the military, I probably would have been the kind of person to stay in there 20 years. But once I went through the whole, I mean, I've talked about it. I whistled at this girl in uniform, man. I got down, dressed down, and I'm a joker. I'm a clown. I wouldn't have had an easy way to go for the first couple of years. But no, I wouldn't want to be in the military now. I know that was a little off of what you were asking, but
do we actually think that North Korea is capable of hitting Guam with a missile, or is the island just too small for that?
I think they're definitely capable of hitting Guam. I don't think they're capable of hitting US mainland yet, but they're definitely capable of hitting Guam.
Well, you said based on what? Like you said, I mean, I'm not saying do they have a missile that will get there, but that really, when he said that, it really made me laugh and also think, yeah, do they have that kind of technology that they could get that close? That's a good question.
Well, it's not so much the distance. I'm quite sure they might now have a missile that could do that distance, but we still don't really know whether they have a missile that has got that precision where they can actually hit something.
Exactly.
I mean, we all remember Saddam Hussein and his Scud missiles that landed sort of most of the time all over the countryside, because all one could really do is give them a certain amount of distance, but one couldn't really hit anything specific with them.
No, but the problem is, Brit, here you go. Let me just lead off on this and what I believe. This is why I put it in here. The problem isn't can they hit them. The problem is now is ratcheting up his saber-rattling rhetoric to the point where he's just, I mean, he's threatening Guam. You see what I mean? Next, it'll be China. And he's threatening everybody already. The next thing he's going to do, why would he pick on Guam? I mean, it is they're part of the United States, but eventually
Guam is where the B-52s are based, isn't it? That's where the bombers are.
Uh-huh.
So strictly speaking, it's a kind of strategic point. And therefore, he is basically saying, well, if they want to come and bomb us with those bombers from there, then we can take out their base. I think that's, but I mean, we can't really say that he is the only one saber rattling here when Trump is basically, preaching fire and brimstone to be rained down upon the North
we
Koreans.
can say he's the only one saber rattling, mate, because there's a difference between talking trash and a reprisal to trash talk, isn't there?
I mean, to what extent, to what extent is what the North Koreans are saying the potential of a reprisal?
Name me a world leader from Ben Gurion to whoever you want. Name me a world leader throughout history that would allow someone to make the statements that has been in the last 2 weeks and not say something along those lines. Churchill?
To be honest, I'm not sure. This is the problem with the whole thing, that nobody really knows whether it is apt, that it is trying to communicate with them in a manner they will understand, or whether it is actually irresponsible and it is heightening the tension. Because I think you will agree that basically, no president in living memory has sounded like that.
No, I agree.
And that is also presidents who have had to deal with the Soviet Union, with Iraq.
They were all a bunch of laurel wreaths, too. They were all a bunch of brushed and bathed politicians, weren't they?
Well, yes, but the kind of skill of international diplomacy tends to kind of be a fairly careful job, doesn't it?
Yeah, I can't believe you don't know I'm going to go this way, but it's not in my memory. But Teddy Roosevelt would have handled it much this way.
I think on the BBC they said the last person to sound like this was really Truman after the atom bomb had been dropped.
Yeah, Harry Truman. He was something else. He was a general.
that basically he sounded quite fierce and said, look, you better start accepting our terms now, or we will pretty much do this to your entire island. So in that regard, that was perhaps the last time someone sounded quite this bellicose. But then that was, you know, at the end of the Second World War.
Well, you got a nutcase over here that is firing off ICBMs. It's just right on the border with one of our main trade partners and just good partners in the world, South Korea, with a vendetta against us for a war that they have never. It's just an armistice. It's still ongoing. And I mean, there's something I don't. There's nothing that's been said by Tillerson, Trump, or anybody else thus far that I think has been out of pace at all. I mean, you have a madman there. I think, if anything, one of the reasons his rhetoric has went up is because he's a little afraid of who's in charge right now. And there'll be no, what'd they call it? Forget about it diplomacy. What was that called? Turn the other cheek diplomacy or whatever Obama had going on there. Forget about
the red line. If they cross the red line, we'll do this.
No, but they had, I'm trying to think of what it's called. They had a name. I'm just making up stuff because I can't think of it. It was as ridiculous as what I just said. It was, don't do anything.
You know, I mean, either way, we're kind of trying to second guess what it is the White House is second guessing with the North Koreans, and
they should just bomb them.
One of the problems is that not only do we not know fully what the White House knows of the North Koreans, we also don't even know whether we can trust the judgment of the White House. That's the all-out problem, really. So it's a kind of double bluff.
Who don't trust the White House?
Is concerned.
I do at this point. I trust the White House. I mean, I don't have a problem trusting the White House right now. Well, especially in this manner, because we're talking about, for the most part, James Mattis, is the chief of staff. I think he's the head of the Joint Chiefs. He's the head of the Department of Defense.
Yes, but when Trump says something like that, and it looked as if he was some kind of dinner table, or it didn't look like a conference. I'm not sure. You know, when they showed that piece where he said that to camera, do we know whether that is actually something he's once again spoken to with his generals, or do we actually think that this might have been one of his kind of, you know, live Twitter storms where he just basically says something and then everybody else has to row back and try and adjust their position?
Oh, I think in this case,
we know that Trump once in a while does that.
Well, I think
that's where the problem lies.
There's no difference with this case than with many others, that he's using his giant platform on Twitter, 30 million, something like that, to make direct statements that the people will be able to hear without being muddled up and filtered through.
Well, no, I understand that.
What you like or what he says, or you don't like what he says, is really irrelevant.
No, this isn't a matter of whether I like it or not. What I mean is, when he made that statement that they won't allow transsexuals in the military, when then eventually one of the generals was asked, he just basically shrugged and said, well, as far as we're concerned, nothing's changing because we haven't been issued any orders.
And still hasn't changed.
And yes, and that's what I mean. So once in a while, Trump will come out with something like that and will not necessarily let the rest of them know. And therefore, when he makes a statement like that, it could be that it is the product of his having
the statement with the transgender came directly from a conversation he had with one of his main advisors from the military.
Well, he referred to other generals.
Yes, his generals was his actual...
One specifically. I can't remember his name right now.
But as such, nothing so far has come of it. So the questions, you know, the questions are valid of basically saying, well, hang on a moment, whom did he actually speak to? And, you know, is this now actually going to happen, or was that actually it?
Well, we can hope that it's going to happen, and time will tell.
When it comes to something like this, we then have to wonder again, is this something that he's spoken to his generals? Is this something that he's spoken to with Tillerson? And then eventually they've kind of come to the conclusion, yes, I think it would be wise for you to make a very stark statement so the Koreans know, that they're facing really stern opposition and that the Americans will not be messed with. Or is this actually something that Trump has just come up with at the spur of the moment?
Well, yeah, it's funny you say that, right?
It was necessarily spur of the moment, but I think it's something that he came up with as a way that the whole world can see what his stance is on it as a commander-in-chief. What is that common sense? I'm sorry.
It's okay. I believe U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson said what the president is doing is sending a strong message to North Korea in that Kim Jong-un would understand because he doesn't seem to understand diplomacy, diplomatic language. This is actual.
That I completely understand. I've heard Tillerson, because he was on Guam, wasn't he, when he actually made that statement?
Yes.
But then we don't know whether that is actually any confirmation that, okay, yeah, we spoke about this together, this was a joint decision, or whether this is actually just kind of trying to cover for, something having been said that nobody knew about, but now trying to create a united front and trying to give the impression that, well, okay, yeah, we all knew about it. Because, I mean, I'm trying to think what it was. There was some shenanigans regarding the accusations with Russia, wasn't there? Some time ago, where the press secretary, that was when it was still Sean Spicer, where he was making statements, and pretty much within an hour or so, Trump then came out and made completely contradictory statements on Twitter, and the entire White House press corps had to very, very quickly, fleet-footedly, kind of change their position and try and sell it to the press.
That's how it is when you're with the boss, man. You can do that when you're the boss. It's cool.
Well, yes, but that is exactly why I'm sort of saying, how much
it shows that
I know what you're saying. I know what both of you want to say. You don't have to like Donald Trump, but he's a really great president. Man, he's doing a really wonderful job. It's good that he sent that message out to that man, Kim Jong-un. I'll refrain from any ad hominems at this point.
Well, I mean, it's not as if Kim Jong-un is going to be, the world's most popular politician anytime soon. It's just a matter of, making sure that South Korea survives this one too.
Well, I got to disagree with you, Brit, on the world's most popular politician, because I don't think anybody else wins elections and whatnot by 100% margin. That's the most popular man.
I don't think he has actually ever put himself up for election. I think it was Saddam Hussein.
Polls. They do polls and stuff, but so if you look at their polls,
I think it was Saddam Hussein who put himself up and got 100% of the vote, wasn't it?
Yeah, 98 in his case. So I remember that 98.
Oh, did he actually put in just a few?
Yeah, there was. Yeah, some. He let it happen too, because everybody would say, well, not ever 100%. Well, never 98.
Just for credibility's sake, he sort of said, oh well, one or two people spoiled their ballot paper.
Saddam was badass, man. Hate on me for this, but Saddam Hussein was badass. He loved Godfather. He loved a good Cuban cigar. He loved to dance with his sons. Yes, once in a while he had to throw some moron off a building kicking and screaming, or march him out in the desert and strap, 25 pounds of plastique on him and blow him into pizza toppings. But that's the only thing these people understand out there. Look at the country now. With all of our laws and all that we're trying to do. How good is it working now, Brit? It was a great place to live. Baghdad was a wonderful place to live when Saddam was in charge.
I think it was the most developed.
Most developed women could hold any office, man.
That was before the Gulf Storm. It was the most developed country in the Middle East.
Yes, send the bloody Americans in to do a regime change and bring in democracy into a land where they don't just understand, don't understand it.
Well, no, I mean, even prior to the regime change, the standard in Iraq had already dramatically dropped, because after Gulf Storm, after the first war, they were pretty much smashed to pieces. So it was very, very difficult to hold the country together. So under Saddam already then, the standard of living had fallen dramatically, and things like child mortality had gone up
by a hell of a lot.
Yeah, but you can still trace it back to meddling from the Western countries. And yes, Logical Lion, Houday, and Kusei were monsters. They were rough people. But Saddam, everybody,
I always have to interject when I hear about Uday and Hussein or whatever he was called.
Yeah.
Because this is what we're told. To what extent any of that was actually true.
We know Houday had a body double that made it through.
You always have to keep in mind that just how fantastical some of the lies were on the first Gulf War.
Oh, maybe they were wonderful boys. Houday.
Well, no, I mean, do you remember the babies supposedly pulled out of incubators and dropped on the floor and things like that? None of these things ever happened. Oh. They were pure propaganda. So for them afterwards, for the next war, to claim that the entire family were made up of monsters, you wouldn't really put it past them to have made that up. Now, I'm not saying it isn't true, but I am saying one has to treat those things with a pinch of salt because, frankly, it could be entirely made up because in the end, we don't really know.
Well, they hated Saddam over there because women could, if you remember Dr. Germ, she was one of the 52 cards when they had cards to give to the service boys, everybody on their Ace of Spades, of course. Well, anyway, so women could hold any rank. They didn't have to wear no burqas. Every household could have an AK-47 and unlimited ammunition in it. You had the right to defend yourself. You could open up a cab stand, have a taxi cab or fruits. You could do. It was very entrepreneurial, as they're trying to be again. But we're moving all of our laws in there, and we're talking about a place that is. It's not like when you go to Mexico. It's like you step back into the 50s. Like Logical Line was saying, that's why he likes Cambodia, because he's raising this girl in 1940s America is what it comes down to with those values. But when you go to the Middle East, folks, you're not going to 1950s America. You're going to 50s, but you're going to 1750s. You're going back a ways with how they do things.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing when it comes to the Middle East, and I think people forget this quite often, I think particularly new generations tend to forget it, is that the Middle East didn't always quite look the way it does now. There was a time when the Middle East was considerably more modern. So if you actually would have seen it in the 1970s, you would have seen various countries.
Tehran was beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, trying to be Western and succeeding to a certain extent. The Lebanon, which of course now houses Hezbollah, was actually known as the Switzerland of the Middle East.
Yeah, beautiful tourist destination.
Because it had a lot of financial institutions there. It was kind of the financial center of the Middle East. Oh. And again, yes, promenades and ladies in modern dress with handbags walking around. The same in Tehran. You had women in miniskirts, which of course was still the fashion then. Yep. And now it's burqas, and in plenty of places music has been banned and whatever. There was actually a piece I saw, I think I actually downloaded it, because I said to myself, I definitely want to make a video with it once. And it is Nasser, Gamal Abdel Nasser, the nationalist leader of Egypt. It's him holding a speech, and you get the subtitles underneath. And basically, he is speaking to the crowd, and he's saying that this preacher from the Muslim Brotherhood or whatever is telling him that, oh, well, women should be wearing veils. And he kind of jokes, sort of saying, well, can you make your daughter do what you want? Can you make your wife do exactly what you want? So you know how hard that is. And you want me to tell every woman in Egypt she has to wear a veil? Are you out of your mind? It kind of shows how even the attitudes in the Arabic world themselves were completely different from what they are now. Now they're kind of referring to it as, oh, this is how it has always been for all eternity. And you just think, well, no, actually, if you go back one generation, it wasn't the case. We have seen an incredible sort of retrenchment. And my personal feelings are that that has more than likely happened as a reaction to westernization. That basically these may well be the kind of, pained throes of the Muslim world, trying to change, but then refusing to change, but then trying to change again, whereby this may well take several generations before eventually modernity begins to properly take hold. So modernity tried to get in there, and this is now the counter-reaction to it culturally. Because, I mean, let's face it, sooner or later it will happen. And this sort of pretense of, oh, well, we can have Dubai and it can look all modern, but we can have it and still be medieval, that just doesn't work. And we all know that long-term it doesn't work. And I'm always reminded of that photograph I saw once where it actually caused me to laugh out loud. And it was of an insurgent in Iraq. He might actually have been an Al-Qaeda fighter. And it was a shot by some brave photographer who was in the war zone. And he caught this guy standing there with his rocket-propelled grenade launcher on his shoulder. And he was kind of peeking round a corner, sort of almost kind of preparing to fire. And I saw this photograph and I just laughed out loud because I thought, you think you're fighting the West and you don't know that you've already lost. Because he was standing there in Nike trainers, blue jeans, and an Arsenal football shirt.
Oh dear.
But he was still thinking that he was putting up a brave fight against the West and throwing out the infidels. And that's where I think you can see the kind of schizophrenic position that the Middle East at present finds itself in. And at some point that is more than likely going to resolve, but it is, until we get to that point, it is more than likely going to take a lot of toing and froing, whereby they take
question for
2
you,
steps forwards and then 3 steps back and then 4 steps forwards again. Go ahead.
I was going to say, do you think that it's a case of you've got one generation that is starting to be progressive, that's trying to not have the Muslim religion right at the front of their foreground, as in their thinking, and then you've got this new generation that's coming through that's putting it right at the front of their political thinking? Do you think that's the reason why the Middle East is going the way it is, or do you just think it's something else?
Well, I think there are several factors in that regard. I mean, that would more than likely make a full stream all of its own. But I think sort of on the cultural side, it is kind of, action and reaction. But of course, there are other things that have happened too. I mean, there was the Iranian Revolution that definitely caused waves across the whole Middle East. Then you also had the problem with places like the PLO, when you have Palestine, where they were clearly deliberately indoctrinating their young to kind of hate the Israelis and be ferociously fanatical Muslims. And they were trying to do that as a kind of bargaining chip in order to put pressure on the Israelis. Basically, if you want us to stop doing this, then you will have to give us A, B, and C. Of course, the deal between the Israelis and the Palestinians never happened. And eventually, the PLO kind of completely lost control of the beast that they had created, because they had then totally fanaticized a part of their population. And we know how important that part of the Middle East conflict is to the wider Middle East. So yeah, we have seen sort of several things like that occur that have kind of played into it. Then you've got Al Qaeda and ISIS and whatever. But that's what I mean. It's a rather large, expansive problem. But just looking at it from the cultural side, if you consider where they once were in the 1970s, where, of course, they were not like the West, but it looked as if they were getting there. They were progressing in much the same way that Olga was saying before about Mexico. They perhaps were a few decades behind, but clearly they were moving in the same direction.
Yeah, as you said, look at Turkey, look at Iran.
Yeah, and then suddenly everything reversed, and yeah, now eventually, several decades later, we are where we are now. But there seems to be this pretense as though that previous change had never happened, when it's kind of almost ignoring it, writing it out of history. Anyway, yes, I think we're about to be told about Trump in North Korea in 1999.
Negotiate like crazy, and I'd make sure that we tried to get the best deal possible. But look, Tim, if a man walks up to you on a street in Washington, because this doesn't happen, of course, in New York, but if a man walks up and puts a gun to your head and says, "Give me your money," wouldn't you rather know where he's coming from before he had the gun in his hand? And these people in 3 or 4 years are going to be having nuclear weapons. They're going to have those weapons pointed all over the world and specifically at the United States. And wouldn't you be better off solving this really potentially unbelievable, and the biggest problem, I mean, we can talk about the economy, we can talk about Social Security. The biggest problem this world has is nuclear proliferation. And we have a country out there in North Korea, which is sort of wacko, which is not a bunch of dummies, and they are going out and they are developing nuclear weapons. And they're not doing it because they're having fun doing it. They're doing it for a reason. And wouldn't it be good to sit down and really negotiate something, and ideally negotiate? Now, if that negotiation doesn't work, you better solve the problem now than solve it later, Tim. And you know it, and every politician knows it, and nobody wants to talk about it. Jimmy Carter, who I really like, and he went over there. It was so soft. These people are laughing at us.
The former general of the Air Force, Merrill McPeak.
Yeah, I mean, I could play more of that. It's not terribly long, but I want to say one thing off the bat. Everybody knows I'm going to stand up for the president, just like I did when Obama was president. I had to stand up for him a lot where I'm at, and I did. But he was sharper then, if nothing else. And I'm sure, I mean, he's 70. I know a lot of really quick 70-year-olds. He's one of them, but he did seem to, maybe it's because he's thinking about so many things. I could make some excuses. I won't. He was sharper than he is now.
Definitely. But that might be because he's not reading from a teleprompter and he's not having to write a speech where that actually came from his heart instead of his head. He actually meant it properly.
Perhaps because then he felt freer saying things, because he didn't have the sort of the weight of the world weighing down on him. Yeah,
he didn't have the Britisher, just dissecting every little thing he tweets all the time.
Yes, he knew that he didn't feel then that he would be scrutinized to the level that he would be scrutinized now.
No, he didn't. I don't think he knew that until he took office, or probably while he was running, he got an idea. But now everything he tweets, it's news. Damn near everything he says.
You just one quick question for a quick answer. Do you think when he stood, he really wanted to be president?
Yes.
Okay. Yep.
I think he's wanted to be president for a long time.
Yeah, he wrote a book about it as well, didn't he?
Well, yes, but the only reason I asked it was because, of course, there was quite a few people that were wondering, look, is this actually a gimmick? It's just gone out of control. And he never wanted to be president to start with, and then suddenly that much came his way that he suddenly realized, oh my God, I'm in this with I'm actually in the running.
No, I don't think that's it. But I will say what I think solidified him really wanting to do it is whenever Obama roasted him there at that breakfast.
Yep. When he did his mic drop.
Yep. You could see that he was just in his mind. He was like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to have your job, mate." But no, I think the only people that it's been a joke to, is no one really. Some people wanted to make it like it was because they want to discount somebody that is true Americana, man. I don't know how else to say it, British. You don't like that. I understand. I don't always like it. But there is no one that's more true primal Americana right now, more Teddy Roosevelt and Truman and Ike all rolled up into one than Donald Trump. It is what it is.
I disagree. Scaramucci was more American than Trump.
Scaramucci, the mooch. Wait, you're 10 quids in the mail, mate, for bringing up Scaramucci that way. That deal's still on for all hosts, all guests. Wait.
Yeah, all that Scaramucci was missing in that regard really was, wearing a basketball T-shirt, a cowboy hat, sitting on top of a horse with a double cheeseburger in one hand and a bottle of Coca-Cola in the other, and then really we would have had the full U.S. experience.
Well, he is that. Only his horse is a 757 Boeing with Rolls-Royce engines. And he wears a shirt. But his shirt.
You do of course realize that I'm trying to be as offensive and patronizing as I could possibly be.
I'm just giving it back to you, mate. The way I look at it, Brit, is I don't think that in your lifetime we could ever elect a president that you would approve of. I don't think so. It's a lot of it is because
I think that's hardly to do with your being American. I think it's simply got to do with the fact that you would finally have to find a non-politician, because I would neither, I would also not recommend any of our politicians.
I would.
Who would that be?
Rupert Rees-Mogg. Moggy.
Nigel Farage, Boris.
Well, as long as it's not Emmanuel Macron. Have you heard what is happening over there?
I know there was another attack this morning.
Hey, boys, shall we have the first ranker in? He just ding-donged me.
Might as well.
Why not? Yes.
All right, yeah, I'm going to send him the link.
No, when it comes to Emmanuel Macron, his popularity is suddenly beginning to wane rather dramatically.
Is that because he can't form a party? By any chance?
No, I mean, he dominates everything now, doesn't he? I mean, he got two-thirds of the vote when it came to the presidential election. He then also won the out-and-out majority in the parliament with completely new people.
Yeah.
And you would have sort of thought, oh, well, he's going to walk on water next, But the moment you start making decisions, you start upsetting people. And, he kind of was this, I'm the new man. I'm the kind of Justin Trudeau of France. Everything is going to be wonderful under me. So a hell of a lot of people were very quickly disillusioned the moment he then actually started talking about policies, because he started talking about benefit cuts. He started talking about actual employment reform and things like that, because France has struggled to reform its employment market for decades. And every single time when a politician proposed it, the unions came out and there was mass strikes, and they blockaded the harbour in Calais, and there was burning tyres on the motorways.
Well, what the French are good at.
Yeah, I mean, they are, that is part of their political process, rioting.
Rioting? Yes. Really? That is a French thing in y'all's mind?
Yes.
Or you just,
yes.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, definitely, yeah.
It goes back to their history of the French Revolution.
Like the guillotines and whatnot, huh?
They have had several sort of revolutions in their history, and therefore it is seen as a legitimate means by which the populace can kind of voice its dissatisfaction with the political elite.
Well, I'll be.
And one of the favorite things they like to do is blockade the port in Calais in order to make it impossible for people and goods to get in and out of Great Britain. And like that, it is the British government that then starts piling pressure on the French government and starts saying, look, sort this out.
And then as normal, they give up and surrender.
And then, yes, the French government then tends to back down. And of course, now Macron is in a position where he can't really back down because he has got such a massive majority that, I mean, he's kind of, if he can't even do anything with such a big majority, then he will look completely feeble.
Yeah.
But of course, the one story that seems to have grabbed the headlines more than anything else is his move for the First Lady. Because France has hitherto never had an official position of First Lady. And he wishes to introduce it for his wife. And
is that the same old lady that he was humping when he was 12?
Somewhere along those lines.
Yeah, his nanny.
I don't believe he was 12 at the time, but
11. It was 11.
But he wants to create this position, and that would then come with incumbent costs. And of course, because of some shenanigans that have been going on in French politics, there has been kind of a step away from people being allowed to employ their relatives and things like that. So an MP can no longer employ his wife as a secretary and things like that. Things that should never have been possible in the first place. But because of the scandal that involved the conservative, François Fillon, the leader of the Conservatives. I mean, otherwise, if it wouldn't have been for that scandal, he would more than likely be president now. So because of things like that, it is now seen that one has to change that. So at the same time as he is introducing changes like that, he is then creating a special position for his spouse. So the French are basically saying, this is completely hypocritical. Are you out of your mind?
Yeah, but he was like that in the run-up to the election anyway. He was always saying, one time he was given a policy where he was like, I'm not going to challenge the bankers, and then in the next breath, we're going to challenge the bankers. It was just that indecision, I think, that actually won him.
Yeah, no, I had a funny feeling about him, and I sort of said that it more than likely wouldn't work because his rise to power is a complete con job. He is the person who was picked by the Conservatives and the Socialists to be the backstop to stop Le Pen in case they realize that they are not in a position to do so. And of course, that is exactly what he did.
Yeah, with the backing of the Rothschilds and every other banker in the rest of Europe to make sure that Le Pen didn't win.
It wasn't so much the Rothschilds and the bankers, it was the fact that he had the Socialist Party and the Conservative Party behind him. I mean, if you were to stand here in Britain and you would have the backing of Labour and the Conservatives, you couldn't really go far wrong, could you?
No. No. Yeah, I think you might win that one.
If in America you were standing for president and you had the backing of the Democrats and the Republicans, again, it would more than likely be pretty. It would be a pretty safe bet.
Yeah, I don't think an independent has ever come close to actually win the first lot, have they?
Yes, but I would say he was independent, but he was never really truly independent. His independence was a complete sham. He was the former finance minister of the socialist government.
Yep.
So, I mean, don't tell me this is an independent person. Basically, what had happened is the polls were clearly indicating
that Le Pen was going to absolutely trounce the rest of the political parties.
So they kind of set up a kind of spare tire 12 months before the election in the hope that things would still swing towards them. But if they wouldn't, they wanted to have this spare that they could kind of introduce, which of course they did, and it succeeded. But it was an elaborate lie from beginning to end.
Yeah,
and I am quite amazed that the French people actually fell for it. But then again, I mean, in all fairness to the French people, the only other choice was Marine Le Pen, and they looked at it and they said, well, we would more than likely vote for Marine Le Pen because she was very popular. But we don't want the Front National.
Yeah.
So basically, it was the party that they were all completely repelled by. And she even acknowledged that because when she went for the second round, she officially stood down from being leader of the National Front.
And she fired her father as well, didn't she?
Well, yes, but he came out a few days before the election and held a rally for the National Front, which reminded everybody very noisily why they didn't want to vote National Front. So it was a complete debacle.
Hmm.
So it's a bit like, Corbyn having a good chance of winning the next election, and then 2 weeks before the election is held, Tony Blair comes out and holds a rally, reminding all Labour voters why they abandoned Labour the first time round. So that would be kind of the equivalent, and that's what Jean-Marie Le Pen did a week or two before the elections. And I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall when Marine Le Pen got home and had a few choice words with her father.
Yeah, that would have been quite interesting. What do you think, First Ranker?
I do not know half as much about French politics to have a say in this, really. The only thing I know is that I've been ashamed of myself the last 2 weeks because I always noticed that the British have said, "Oh, Marine Le Pen" instead of Marie Le Pen, and I honestly thought her name was Marie Le Pen. So I searched it up, and it turned out there is an N in her name. So I've been wrong.
I'm sorry to be so pedantic on those little things, but yes, she is actually called Marine. Yes. He is actually Jean-Marie. He's got the Mary in it. Yes.
French names.
Well, yes, but
Mary and her name is Marine.
Well, his name is Jean Mary, so to speak. Jean-Marie Le Pen.
Wow. And hers is Marine.
And hers is Marine, yes. They're somewhat exceptional names. But isn't it the case that a lot of Spaniards, even the males, are called Maria or something like that? As a second name.
Wouldn't have a clue.
I wouldn't know. I just know like Hispanics, and you don't call them Maria.
Maybe their
forename would be Sebastian or Juan or something like that. But then I think, as their second or third name, they can have Maria.
That's a little puffy, isn't it?
Well, maybe that's what happens.
Well,
when you
yes, but if you go back to the days when the Spanish were something, they walked around in stockings with golden earrings on, so
high heels and whatnot. They've always been a little kind of puffs, haven't they? Them and the French both, a little light in the loafers.
Well, I think that may have been why Harry Morgan had a certain advantage over them.
Oh dear.
Yes, I think the common sense guy is worried that I'm about to start talking about the raid on Panama and things like that. But we're swiftly moving on before we get too historical.
I looked up a story that's kind of funny.
Okay, far away.
40 minutes left. There was a police officer, and I do think this is going to turn out to be another German if I say it's a British person, but it's in pounds what they paid him anyway. This was in the Metro.
It's West Midlands Police that this is from, so it's definitely English.
Yeah. So police officer gets £12,000. That's about $16,500, $17,000 payout for being bitten by a flea while on duty.
Surely there must be more to this.
Well, we can delve into this a wee bit. It says a police officer received that much money compensation after being bit by a flea while at work. Figures have revealed. The unnamed cop was handed 12,127 pounds in damages after he successfully sued West Midlands Police, which also had to pay $4,185 in legal fees. The case was just one of a number of workplace injuries claims to the force, which paid 61,131 pounds in compensation between April 1st, that's a little sketchy.
No, that's apt.
Last year and March 31st. The payout was branded ludicrous by former Lib Dem leader Tim Farron, and former officers said compensation culture is rife in forces throughout Britain. So that so far, it's not saying much about, what why they paid him. It's just saying that it's too bad. Of course,
I mean, surely there must be something else to it. I mean, nobody gets £12,000 for a flea bite, even in a compensation culture.
I'm scanning quickly, and no, it's not saying. It says he said
it doesn't explain why.
Yeah, go ahead. No, yeah, it doesn't explain why. It just says this is the police department response. It says absolutely baffling. I can't believe that I was a policeman for over 20 years, and I can't even imagine what would have happened if I'd have gone to my senior officer and started moaning because I'd been bitten by a flea. So, apparently it happened while he was at work. So
well, I can only imagine that he must have got some kind of bite, and it must have got infected, and he must have had some kind of complications. There is no way that they would have just paid him $12,000 for a
it's
flea
not
bite.
saying much about that either. It's just saying that he got bit by a flea and they paid him this money, and apparently these are the kind of folks that are signing up to the police force nowadays in your island.
Yeah, it doesn't bode well, does it?
No,
it doesn't. There's also two others at the towards the bottom that got done for manual labour. One got 7.5, one got $8,000. There's also one that tripped over at work and got over $5,000.
But again,
and that's what our police officers are.
As they tripped over at work, but more than likely must have done himself some harm. Because
oh man. I'm not saying
just kind of wondering, if he kind of knocked his front teeth out and needed some replacement or something, that might account for something. If you know what I mean.
Have health insurance over there for police officers? I think everybody has it. I bet the cops got even better, dental and whatnot.
But I just, to me, this sounds a little dubious. I would gladly share the outrage with you if I knew that this really, truly was all that had happened.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
But I'm just a little suspicious that the newspaper may, for reasons of making the story more spectacular, have omitted to tell us a few things.
Can one be allergic to fleas?
I could well imagine that one could have something like that. That one could have.
I still don't know how it would be incumbent upon the police department to pay out damages based on a flea bite.
Because you're at work at the time, so you're under their hours.
You know when he got bit by the flea.
Depends if we have what you call accident books, and if you have anything that happens to you at work or anything like that, you write in the accident book straight away. And if something happens from it, you can go to that book and go, well, it happened at that time, at this point, and at this place. So the culture's already ingrained into us from the health and safety culture that Tony Blair and everybody else decided to put in.
We have had some fantastic health and safety incidents. I mean, I remember there was, in winter, there was some kind of case where some kid had fallen into a pond and was drowning. And there were two police officers present who called for reinforcements. And what they basically stated, and they were in no way later censured or anything, they basically said they didn't have any training to deal with this. And you just sort of felt, well, I'm sorry, but surely you don't need training. At some point, if someone's drowning, you just do something.
You would try to, wouldn't you? You wouldn't just stand there and call for backup.
Yep. Precisely, but that apparently was what happened. So yes, when it comes to health and safety, that is a bit of a cancer in this country, I'm afraid. Particularly when you then cross it with some people being complete Jobsworths.
Yeah.
Jobsworth, that's just for the American audience, is someone who will only just do the bare minimum of what his job requires and not an iota more.
That's how, and you call that Jobsworth?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, huh. Never would have known that.
Like, Bobby, there's a kid drowning in the pond. What are we going to do about it? I don't know. Consult the manual.
Yeah. I don't have any training. We don't have any training. Send someone with training.
Yeah, I'm not a lifeguard.
Yeah. Call a lifeguard from the local leisure centre. Go, go, go.
I just think it's a culture of, I mean, as it stands now, how long has it been that you could just go sign up and they give you you know, 100 quid every fortnight and pay your rent and whatnot. How long has it been like that in England? Forever?
A while.
Well, I mean, I really don't think that it's necessarily quite that easy. But yes, we have seen the kind of onset of a kind of culture of people basically just expecting to be looked after. And the problem is that it's very difficult to get the next generation of those people to kind of break with that cycle. So basically, if you have got a household where no one in the entire family in living memory has ever had a job. So basically, you've got this kid and neither of his parents have ever had a job. His grandparents have never had a job. How on earth do you try and inculcate this child with the idea that he perhaps ought to do something when he grows up rather than just not have a job? And that is this kind of major staggering problem that we seem to be facing.
Yeah, I think that's what's causing these people to get paid for flea bites and whatnot. It's just they see people getting by, they don't want to go and do their
Well, I mean,
officer. They'd rather get paid.
When it comes to people being bitten by flea bites, I think in that regard, the United States of America, I think, leads the field, doesn't it?
The compensation culture, yeah, we definitely adopted that from America.
Over here, it was. I mean, what was it? Was it 12,000 or was it £16,000? Yeah, for that flea bite that it was mentioned.
12,100 and something.
But I mean, we have all heard, you know, someone getting a bruise and then suing someone famous for $20 million, and you know, mental damage and trauma and all these things. So when it comes to it, the Americans in that regard still lead the field. So
yeah, everybody knows that.
We are merely humble followers in that regard.
If I hurt myself in some way in a store because I slipped and fell, I would be. It's not in me to even consider that. I mean, if there was some kind of something that shouldn't have been there, I mean, I can imagine there'd be scenarios, but for the most part, these things, these slip and falls, these slip and jimmy accidents, it's just a scam. And then not only, because I don't know about this police officer, but he might have got the flea bite and now he can never work again. So it's not only that, but now a disability, and a lot of these cases with the slip and fall, slip and jimmy situations, they get that payout, then they get paid for life because they, of course, can't work now. And then they go out and fall every 5 or 10 years somewhere anyway.
Well, I remember there was something mentioned once on QI. I think it was a place in Florida. I might be wrong, where people were getting rather large payouts from their insurance companies for losing a limb.
Oh, that was
the insurance companies realized that there was a cluster. Now, how would it be possible that everybody was losing limbs in that particular place? And it kind of it was the case that some people kind of saw that, oh, it had worked for John down the road, so we'll try the same thing. And they incidentally always just lost the limb that, you know, wasn't their main. So basically, if you needed to lose part of your arm, it would be part of your left arm because you were right-handed. So yeah, eventually I think the insurance company cottoned on, but apparently it's quite a well-known case in insurance circles that yes, there was
there's a well-known director named Earl Morris. He directed The Fog of War. I don't know if you ever heard it, but anyway, he invented something. Oh, I can't remember what the name of it is, but it's so that you can look at the camera and you can see him in a screen, and he can talk to you through an earpiece where you're looking him right in the eyes, but you're looking at the camera, and he can have text go through there, so you're looking right at the camera while you're being asked questions and answering. But anyway, he did this movie, really strange movie called Vernon, Florida, and the only reason Vernon, Florida is a movie is because he went there. It was the capital of what you're talking about. More people lost parts of them for insurance than any place else in the world. And the insurance companies just put so much pressure on him that he ended up stitching together this documentary about the very eccentric people that lived in this little panhandle town of Vernon. But that is weird, isn't it? And yeah, they figure out the scam. There, it was a lot of fingertips, and then you'd have people that lost a fingertip, then this part, and then this part, because apparently every time they give you like 10, and 10,000. But if you lost the whole
they were doing a lot of sawing of wood, were they?
Oh, fat little plants. I don't know what the heck. I never did look into where they may have worked, but yeah, apparently
Everybody had a combine harvester in their backyard.
that'd take your bleeding arm off, man. Oh, I couldn't imagine needing to get paid that bad to where I would sacrifice any part of my body. I don't do that. Oh, mercy's sake. Well, that's interesting. All that from a flea bite.
I think the Britisher will need some medical attention now. It seems he choked on some water.
Yes. Precisely.
Yeah, I don't think he's probably not going to die though. I'm gonna get up and get a glass of water in a second, but I wanted to show you all this in the Metro also. Is this story about this? I mean, I don't know. This is critical. I thought it was kind of funny, and the best part is the video that goes with it. But it's the BBC news presenter Simon McCoy. Y'all know who he is?
Yep.
Oh, he seems unimpressed with the story about surfing dogs. It talks about how this is the silly season because it's summer, and that the standards of news stories are lower a little bit. So let me just play this little piece for you all here, just real quick. It's kind of fun.
I'd just like to point out this is all set in San Francisco, so you can get the level of idea what we're going with.
Now, you're watching BBC News. Just bear in mind it is August. This does not look like a walk in the park. Dog owners and their pets in California have hit the waves in the second annual World Dog Surfing Championships. Here are the pictures.
There's also style, there's confidence, there's the size of the wave. Because some events have really big waves, some have very small waves. There's a lot of style and techniques. It's really interesting.
The competitors' main challenge is to stay afloat on the board. This is in Pacifica near San Francisco, but there are also prizes for the best dressed and tandem surfing dogs. The winner, of course, being crowned top dog. That's a shame. We've run out of pictures.
He does not sound happy.
Oh, you can hear him blowing his breath out, man. You could hear him, but he was like, there were awards given for best dressed and of tandem, and no, he's obviously it's just
yes,
that's like my funny bone.
Silly season. It is what they call the silly season, and you do get these torturous stories. And I think here he just basically couldn't help himself and just thought he would let everyone know what he felt.
Yeah, for one thing, isn't there silly stories from merry old England? Because right away he was like, yeah, this is from San Francisco.
Well, I can well imagine that there might have been a editorial meeting before, and more than likely some young editor somewhere in the director's booth sort of said, oh, well, yeah, we definitely want that. And he might have looked at that particular person and said, look, seriously, we haven't got anything better. You know, there's North Korea going on. Are we really going to concentrate on dogs, on surfboards that, frankly, they don't even really look that impressive? You know, the footage that you saw there, you really wouldn't be, we wouldn't really be jumping for joy, even if you were a fan of surfing dogs. You just sort of felt, surely we've got something.
Well, look at the dogs, Brisher. Look at this dog's face. Does it look like it's at the height of joy to you?
Even if we're looking for something funny, can't we find something a little wittier than this? And I think that may have been kind of overruled, and he may therefore have kind of had to kind of grin and bear it, but he sort of decided to let the audience know that he wasn't on the side that wanted to have this on air.
Yeah. Here's the exception to the rule. This dog looks like it's really having a good time, but then you see this one jumping. But look at this dog behind it. Look at that dog. Salt water. I mean, if you're a human being, you're rubbing it out of your eyes with your hands. I can't imagine a dog can't even do that. Salt water up in its eyeball.
On this subject, wasn't there a case in America, and I think this hit the headline, where there was one of these and finally stories, and the news team wanted to go to some story about Paris Hilton. And I think the female news anchor who was there kind of said, no, let's not do that. Let's report on, and then sort of go to some serious story instead. And then there was, basically there was a bit of a kind of a moment where you could sort of see that the directors were kind of trying to insist upon their power and whatever in people's earphones and whatever, and tell the other anchor, no, let's go to the Paris Hilton story. And she just basically would not have it. She was sort of saying, no, we're not doing that. And then after that, she got a lot of applause because, not on set, but from the public, that basically said, well, yes, thank God somebody didn't want to go to the Paris Hilton story, because frankly, we've had enough of that by now. So no, I just wondered whether that would ring any bells with anybody, or perhaps someone in the chat, because I distinctly remember that having happened once.
I don't remember, but that's
4 years ago.
More of that. I tried to keep it fun here, but we're not running no news organization here, are we, Brit? It's more like something to entertain us and our few little, and we might talk about some serious things, but that's why I always try to have something in like the last couple stories, because it can't all be.
It's always good to lighten things up. I'm very much on the side of that. Yes.
Yeah, but when you're talking about like a half-hour news, like in other words, you're tuning into your favorite channel in the evening after dinner to see your news, 6 o'clock news with ABC, NBC, whatever. There's not a lot of room for that, and now finally I understand. I like how you put that too. In other words, it's the wrap-up story of the night, and it's something whatever. But no, not Paris Hilton, man.
Ogre, I have sent you something on Twitter, and I think you will find it very, very good, because it's something to do with the BBC pay gap.
Am I the only one that thinks that Paris Hilton is a hideous, ugly human being?
I would like to say yes.
Wait, you sent me it on Twitter? Common Sense Guy, I'm looking.
I did. I sent it to you as a direct tweet rather than a direct message.
Okay, gotcha.
I've seen sightlier women in my days.
Yeah, I've seen better.
All right, let me play this for the Common Sense Guy. Just take me a second to get this set up is all. Bear with.
Africa at Old Trafford, they won by 177 runs, meaning they win the series 3 tests to 1. Patrick Geary reports from Old Trafford.
177 runs, meaning they win the series 3 tests to 1. Patrick Geary.
Is that what I think it is back there?
It is yes. It is yes.
Hopefully it was blurred out, but that looked like somebody was watching pornography in the back there.
This was merely someone doing research.
Clearly.
Oh, that's something else. Well, I don't know if y'all have seen it. There's this one famous clip of they cut to this news lady that didn't know she was going to be on, and they caught
between
her.
Her legs.
Yeah, they caught her with a dildo. That, obviously had like on a garter belt where she could have this thing up in her while she was doing her news thing. I was like, wow, man.
High stress jobs. They need their release.
Really? Is that? I mean, really? Come on. Man.
It must be. There's no other reason. They're working so hard and so long that they need a release from something.
That's messed up, man. That's some diversity right here. I mean, you got to wonder, is that whoever's computer that was, they're in trouble. They're going to narrow it down to who was on there. It might have been somebody that knew their days were numbered and did that on purpose.
Well, I think one of the worst sins of that was, of course, that it was not gay porn.
No,
not diverse enough.
Yeah, it's transgendered.
No, the woman was
and the lady in question was white.
Yeah,
that too.
I couldn't tell the race.
Confused at my contribution to that, then you have never heard of the BBC.
I have no idea what you
That
mean.
gets
Big
about all we
Black.
talked about last week. I mean, the fact that they just ruined Doctor Who and whatever, all this stuff. Got to have so many Asians and girls and black and white. What? No whites, right? There's no limit on the white. They're just whatever's left.
Yeah, there is absolutely no figure on the white population of the BBC. No, none whatsoever. Unless, of course, we're talking women. Yes.
You have to add up all the percentages, and then whatever percentage is left, those can be the white people.
Exactly.
The white men.
Because you said somebody on the BBC got in trouble because they had the bad taste of pointing out that there was two men, and they were like, "Oh, this don't happen very often."
Yeah, precisely. Yeah, no, but this just struck a chord because I think it might have been Mundane Matt who did a piece which kind of played into that. You know, too many white men, that sort of thing. And that was somebody put out some kind of critique of the movie Dunkirk that is now out.
Yeah.
And complained about, oh, well, this just being something for men. And it's just about men fighting. And
no black men in it. That was mentioned.
And you just sort of thought, well, hang on a moment. Dunkirk, I mean, how many women did you actually think would be in the film about 300,000 men trapped on a beach trying to get out of France? It baffles the mind. I mean, surely the subject matter of the movie would be some sort of a giveaway.
You'd think.
But apparently that would kind of, as far as this author was concerned, this would only mean that this would just be another reason not to make this film. And of course, she had to sneak into her article how much she liked Wonder Woman and how much that would more than likely keep her going for the rest of the year. So it gives you a sort of an idea of the angle at which she was coming at this movie. As in, there are a lot of white men in it, so I'm just not going to like this movie just by default.
Yeah, I have no idea. It's quite a good depiction of how the historical events might have happened.
Yeah, it don't matter. There was too many white males. And that's what killed me is in the miracle in Dunkirk. There was not enough black people. There were no black people there.
I think there was one colored extra who is sort of in the background.
Yeah, but that's to do with quotas. It's fine. It's not a problem.
And
I wonder what the first ranker, being Swedish, what he makes of the I do not know who made the series. Was it Netflix or was it Amazon? I'm not sure. There was a series, Vikings.
Netflix.
And if I recall, there were quite a few black Vikings.
Oh, mercy.
These things happen, you know. No. Well, I have a couple of friends who really enjoy watching it. I have not watched it since I can't afford Netflix. But yeah, I think it's silly.
Well, I've not seen it myself. I've only seen snippets of it and whatever. But I was a bit taken aback by the black.
A lot of black Vikings were there.
Because you just sort of think, well, I'm sorry, but couldn't one just have sort of read up on the very fundamental history of Vikings before one started making the program? Because surely that's not possible.
No, diversity is more important than facts, my friend. You should know that by now.
Oh my goodness gracious. That's just unreal. Diversity only. Why don't they ever cry about diversity in I don't know, let's say in Japan? In Kobe, Japan. Why don't they cry? Why is there nobody there saying there's too many Japanese? Let in some black people. Let in some Mexicans.
That's actually a good idea. We'll do a remake of Zulu. Only all the Zulus will be Asian.
Yeah, right. They can all have they can be like diverse, and they
will be samurais.
They can be played by a 5'2" daggone Asian guy.
Remake of the Seven Samurai, where all of them are Hispanic.
Well, we already appropriated that with the Magnificent Seven, right? You know that. We already stole that from them.
We noticed.
Cultural appropriation. I see it, and then somebody, I don't remember who it was, but one of our little circle here was on Twitter and was saying, well, is it cultural appropriations when somebody in another country is eating a hamburger and eating a cheeseburger and wearing, Vans. And then the person was like, well, cheeseburgers aren't really American. They are. And it went on to, and Vans were made by an American company. I mean, the answer was no, there is no American culture, white culture. So no, and anybody could take what would be considered white culture because you don't own anything. I was like, wow, man. Wow, I really am I'm from a hated race. I was born white in the wrong era. A couple hundred years ago would have been all right. It'd been pretty cool. But now we're the new slave. We're the new niggers, all of us white boys.
We'll get that way, my friend. We'll get that way.
Shit,
it seems to be going now. Well, we're getting Joe Crow. Exactly, we're getting some Joe Crow laws back in the universities, aren't we? You whites drink over there, and us coloured people will drink over here. Enjoy that. Well, get to the back of the bus.
Evergreen College has their day where they used to take the day off, all the black folks, because it was stemmed back to a play where it was the day of absence and the black people didn't show up for a day, and everybody realized, oh, we really need the black folks, which we do. And so it turned into now no white folks. That's where that what's his name, the Jewish.
Yeah, that's when they went to that professor for turning up.
Yeah, and he's Jewish, and they call him everything in the book white supremacy. He's Jewish. They won't have him. And then Ms. U. They painted the black dormitory these colors they wanted, African, I think green and red and black, if I'm not mistaken, and then gave preference to the blacks. I mean, it's coming to where there's going to be just out and out segregations. Whites use the side door.
Yeah. Some might say that it's reminiscence to a Helter Skelter from Charlie Manson. Remember him trying to start a race war? Guess what? He doesn't need to actually be here for it to start. And guess what? He's a crazy man. And we put him away. Well, Americans did.
Yeah. Oh, man. It's been a great day. We're getting close to, 2 hours today, boys? Is that going to be enough for y'all?
Yes, I'm up for anything.
Yeah,
I think after 2 hours we're going to be sufficiently dead, aren't we? I mean, I've already tried choking myself on this apple juice.
Oh,
I trust you all realize that when I muted my microphone, that indicated that I was having a near-death experience.
Yeah, we heard
Don't
you.
Go to the light. Don't go to the light, Richard. Don't go to the light.
We heard you gurgling before you hit it. I could hear you.
Well, yeah, the problem was because I've got these two computers running right now in front of me at the same time. It was a matter of, while choking, working out which of the two mice I actually needed to use in order to mute the microphone.
Breathing comes a little bit higher on that level, isn't it?
It's kind of it suddenly throws up an acute problem whilst you're struggling to breathe and think at the same time.
Have you got a name for her? Computer.
Oh.
No, I don't name computers.
Yeah, I didn't think you would. Well, but you did start it up. It starts up quick, doesn't it?
Yes, this one starts up quite a bit faster than well, I say this one, the new one, because I'm actually on the old one now.
You should call her Elizabeth. Like the Queen. I'm sorry, it's just so dumb.
No, that wouldn't be suitable, because when things start going wrong, you start swearing at it.
Oh yeah, you can't have that. Well, you were the one. You were the one that said you thought she should be drug out of Buckingham Palace and thrown in the street.
Strange that I shouldn't recall ever saying that.
Well, it was really. I'm paraphrasing, but that was close.
You can call her Maggie.
Oh no.
Yes, but then I might have a miner break into my house and start smashing it up.
Oh.
Common sense guy got that one. At least someone did.
Yeah, I did not get it. Who is Maggie?
Maggie Thatcher. That was her nickname.
Yes, and of course the miners were the ones who went to war against her.
Striking. Every way.
I was thinking of miners like young children.
No, I was, yeah.
That's just your mind, Ogre.
Understandable mistake to make. But no, the miners who met with the police at the Battle of Orgreave.
Yes, that was good.
Which actually some Labour MPs are now trying to have a public inquiry about.
again.
And you just sort of think, well, I'm sorry, but yeah, tens of thousands of police turned up, tens of thousands of miners turned up. There was a, there was a bit of a shufti. Quite a lot of people ended up with blooded foreheads and temples, and hundreds, if not thousands, of miners got arrested. But that was over 30 years ago now. Can't we just move on?
Apparently not. Diversity.
Well, yes, but I mean, if you then have got hardline lefties like Jeremy Corbyn running the Labour Party, it isn't really that much of a surprise that they start trying to dig up the past like that. Because
Well,
they're still trying to prove that they weren't wrong back then, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. There's actually there's a story on my Twitter feed I've tweeted out. I can't remember it for the life of me at the minute because I can't remember the names, but I can tell you the premise of the story. There's 3 Labour MPs at this moment in time, including not including Sadiqa Khan, who's also part of this group as well. So 4 in total. They're actually saying that they want to start their own movement so that they can stop Brexit because Jeremy Corbyn won't.
Oh, good luck to them.
No, I agree. There was talk of it coming out as New Labour.
It'd be a great idea to split up the Labour Party.
So half the seats. Yeah,
I think there are people in the Labour Party who are just completely balmy.
Just a few.
They don't seem to realise that their main problem is, yes, if you have a problem with Jeremy Corbyn as leader, get rid of Jeremy Corbyn as leader. As opposed to break up the party you're a part of.
They've tried 3 times to get rid of him, though, haven't they? To be fair, and they haven't been able to. So there's something going on there.
Well, yes, but they have only themselves to blame that he is leader in the first place.
No, I know.
Well, if you remember, when it actually came to the nomination process, in order to be able to stand for leader of the Labour Party, you have to have a certain minimum amount of MPs who are backing you.
Yeah.
He did not have that minimum number.
Nope.
So because the Labour Party felt that it would look bad to only have 3 or 4 other candidates and none of them being from the left of the Labour Party, they convinced some people who didn't really want to support him to lend him their support temporarily, so that like that he would at least be able to stand.
Yeah.
So if it wasn't for those shenanigans, where it was all a matter of what impression it would make, it was all a matter of appearances rather than what one actually politically believed.
But that's just all the virtual signalling of the left at the moment anyway. So
but precisely, if they wouldn't have fallen into that trap of virtual signalling, they would now not be in the position they're in. But then, yeah, what do I know?
Same.
Vote Labour for the many, not the Jew.
Oh dear.
Thanks.
What you have to consider, anybody who isn't British, is that we have Theresa May, who is an absolute harridan, whom not even the Conservative Party wants. Because after she screwed up the general election to such a degree, I think it's now even become clear to the Conservative Party that they think the same of her as I have always done.
A dead horse. Sorry.
Meanwhile, then, you have got the alternative, which is the Labour Party, which is led by somebody who thinks he still lives in the 1970s.
And thinks that he won the last general election as well. By the way, he still does
think. Convinced that he actually won the last general election, which is completely ludicrous when you actually look at his result. But yes, we are effectively stuck between a rock and a hard place because we have got an absolutely impossible prime minister and, yes, an extremely hard left leaning leader of the opposition party who is just completely unacceptable. And that is supposed to be our choice. And you just sort of hope that at least one of them gets struck by lightning anytime soon.
Preferably Corbyn first, because at least we can have a general election after that and not worry about it.
Yeah, I agree.
Just for preferences, that's all.
I mean, I am not one prone to violence, and I don't know if I'm treading over some boundaries.
I feel a but coming on.
Oh
when
yes,
someone, when someone starts a sentence like "I am not someone to be violent," you just sort of feel, well, yes, there's something about to be said here. So please go ahead.
I was dreaming that I was deployed with the army, as I will in a month about. But yeah, I dreamt that I got leave, and my mother came to meet me, and we were going to this politician week in Sweden. And we had fun. We didn't do anything interesting, but then I was approached by Corbyn, who spat his nonsense at me, and I can't remember that I've ever slapped, even laid hands on someone in my dreams, but I decked Corbyn in my dream. Someone I don't really interact with a lot.
Do you know what that suggests? That you're suppressing your inner communist.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with the film Kindergarten Cop?
Yay.
Yeah.
Because in that film, if you remember, Schwarzenegger's character punches the father who was always beating up his child.
Yeah.
And when Schwarzenegger was kind of taken to the office by the stern headmistress of the school, he was convinced he was about to be told off, but then discovered otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
Because having heard you dream of punching Jeremy Corbyn in the face, all I can think of is to ask, how did it feel to punch that bastard?
Well, let's just say, once again, not a very violent person, but when I woke up, I was very sad.
For not punching him hard enough?
No, for it not happening. I mean, my mother is born in South Africa but moved to Israel at a very young age. His rhetoric about how oppressed these Palestinians are as he snuggles up to these terrorists, it boils my blood.
Well, have you heard of his, I don't know if there's been quite a bit going on Twitter about Jeremy Corbyn recently because of the violence in Venezuela.
Oh, yeah, that too.
Have you heard of his kind of trying to do the splits regarding Venezuela, whereby people are obviously asking him what he makes of President Maduro, who is clearly turning into a dictator. But at the same time, he is a socialist, and he is the successor to Hugo Chavez. So Jeremy Corbyn doesn't want to condemn him. So he kind of has to say something, but doesn't want to say something. Have you sort of heard that there is this somewhat of a problem that Jeremy Corbyn has in that regard?
Yeah, he's come out and actually said that he condemns all the violence, but he won't actually say on what side he condemns the violence on.
Yeah, he's taken the Kinnock turn to the whole thing. I condemn violence in all its forms.
He's suddenly turned into Mahatma Gandhi, yes, and he's against all the violence in Venezuela, yes.
Yeah.
But for some reason, he can't bring himself to actually condemn those people who seem to be committing most, by far, of the violence.
The government.
Yes, who just happened to be the socialist government of President Maduro, yes.
Yeah.
So yes, he has a habit of suddenly forgetting his lines when it comes to socialist want-to-be dictators or what shall we say, Middle Eastern organization of questionable reputation.
Or a little island. Or a little island off the coast of England.
Yes, yeah, there is also that. There's that other minor matter. Yes.
Wait, IRA?
Well, yes.
How dare you say that?
He is. In that regard, I tend to be a bit defensive of Corbyn because we don't really know what was going on at the time.
He was
Yeah.
inspecting troops with Kelly.
Oh, he was?
Yeah, there's pictures of him actually inspecting troops walking down the street with the guns of the soldiers for the IRA actually just standing there.
Oh,
and
no,
just walking down the streets with
I was
them.
I was completely unaware of that. So yes, that does definitely put a somewhat different spin on it. If you're inspecting terrorists, that does actually sound just a little different, doesn't it?
Yeah. I would just like to clarify something. He may not have been actually inspecting the troops, but he was walking with Kelly as Kelly was looking at the troops. Just in case anybody wants to do anything to me, there are pictures on the internet of both Kelly and Jeremy Corbyn walking down towards the camera lens looking at troops.
Do anything with the IRA is not really a thing anymore, are they?
No, I think one of the best things that ever happened when it came to the Northern Ireland conflict was the Americans suddenly getting sick of terrorism, because there tended to be this sort of sympathy that a lot of North Americans had with the old Irish cause, wanting to help the people in the old country, and the British trying to tell the Americans, look, actually, it isn't quite as romantic as you think it is. This is people, shooting other people's kneecaps off deliberately. That doesn't quite have the same sort of ring to it as Irish freedom fighters.
No.
So eventually the money dried up from America, and the IRA were very heavily dependent on finances from America.
Oh, I didn't know.
Once people in the US stopped putting money in the bucket in Irish pubs and things like that, that's when it definitely had a significant impact on the IRA in Northern Ireland.
I actually have a question, because I know absolutely nothing about the Troubles. My question is as follows. How come there were so many British casualties?
Them IRAs were some mean bastards. I don't know. I mean, the Brits can answer that.
How do you mean British casualties? I mean, we had troops in Northern Ireland in order to try and maintain the peace, and that made those troops a target.
According to, let's see if I can find the according to the Sutton Index of Death, this I don't really know how to. Once again, I'm using Wikipedia here, who just directed me to that source. It says that the IRA lost around 300 people during the last, what was it, 50 years? And
yeah, something like that.
And the British soldiers lost almost 1,000 people.
Yeah, that will be because you are fighting. You're fighting an anonymous war. You don't have any targets to shoot at, but you are a target.
Yep,
Yeah,
you're wearing a uniform. Yep.
Yeah. Can I just add to that? The reason why British troops were there were not actually to engage with that IRA. They were actually just designed there to maintain peace. So you think of your European police as your MPs that go in and try and look after different bits and pieces. That's what the British were doing. And the reason why we lost so many troops was because the IRA were a fighting force and they were attacking the British at that point in time without any retaliation. That's the reason why we lost so many troops, because we weren't technically in a war with them.
Okay.
And boys, this is fun, but I am going to probably start kicking it down. I learned a lot today. So you know what I usually like to do at this point is give everybody a chance to say something before I just sign off. Go the same way we always do. You just came in a little bit late, first ranker, but just remember when we get to this point, boys, you don't have to. It doesn't have to tie into anything we said today. You might just have something you've wanted to say to 26 people you'll never meet. And now's your chance.
Well, yeah, I'd like to start my final thoughts with a question, and that question is: did we talk about Google anything tonight or today?
No.
No, I'm kind of saving that for Friday, and I didn't. I mean, it's just we got on. I wanted to get the Britisher to talk about a little bit more of the week that was, but he just put out a video on that, the whole whatever debacle. I think I'm going to try to get in on that Friday, but say whatever you want about it. Go ahead.
Well, what I was meaning to say was not really a big analysis of the entire thing that happened, but I just wanted to squeeze out some thoughts I have. And when we are at this point, the point when someone not only can get fired for wrong think, but for alleged wrong think, is when we truly know that we're heading down the wrong path as we are driving on this crazy ride that is life and society. I mean, I'm very young. I got all my life ahead of me. Perhaps one of these days, and this is very cliche, but one of these days I might have a son. And I do not want to say to that son that he will have to keep his mouth shut lest he gets fired.
Yeah, that's good. I hope you never have to say that, bro.
Well, to be honest, I kind of second that, really. I mean, if you look at the way that our situations are going at the minute, you've got the left at the moment in most countries forming Antifa and other black blocs that are trying to get rid of all of the governments that have worked so well for the last 200 to 300 years, so to speak. It's just a social experiment that just doesn't seem to ever go away. And until we combat those ideas, on my personal think, until we actually combat those personal ideas with them, so to speak, the left, I think that this is going to keep on going and keep on getting worse and worse. Where they come up and say, oh, my culture war and stuff like that, we are technically in a culture war. I'm not trying to say we need to get our bayonets on the end of our guns and go and start shooting people, but we do need to start expressing our opinions a hell of a lot more. Because if we don't express our opinions and stand up for what we believe in, our beliefs will get stamped out. Because as First Rank has just quite rightly said, due to wrongthink. Now, me personally, I don't want anybody to lose any form or platform or any idea that they may have. I want it to be challenged, and I want them to maybe relearn or something else like that, or maybe get educated in a different thing that they don't know. But I don't want them to completely and utterly lose themselves and not be who they should be because of wrongthink. I'm not trying to say, oh, I want to be a white nationalist or anything else like that. Just in general, if you've just got a small idea of wrongthink, like what we've taught today, if you were to say that's a certain SJW, you would get people after you to lose your job. And now that's wrong, on my opinion. I'm going to leave it there because otherwise I'll ramble and rant on forever and ever.
Well, talking about expressing one's opinion, these last few days I've come across one or two comments that kind of, how should we say, they irritate you. And that is people who engage in an argument, but simply they don't give you any reason why you would be wrong. So basically they just tell you you're wrong, and then they add this beautiful little phrase, you should do your research. So it basically implies I know everything about this subject. You don't know what I know. You should do your research. Well, alternatively, you could just tell me, and then I would know what is wrong. But you see, I have got this suspicion that there isn't actually anything you know. specifically. But that is just one of your ways of arguing, in which you just come out bold as brass and announce that someone else is completely wrong. And then you dismiss that other person's view, whatever it may be, on the basis of, oh, you don't know enough. And you see this on the political left as well as on the political right. And it is extremely irritating because it closes down any possible debate. Because the debate is simply being closed down on the basis of, you don't know enough. I will therefore not deal with you. Even though you have no idea what the other person's actual objection is. And to my mind, it is kind of, it is the bully's method of argumentation. Because you leave the other side with absolutely no information, nothing to go on. There is nothing with which to debate, because you haven't told them what you disagree with. You simply have come out with an out-and-out statement that they are wrong and that they should do some more research. And yeah, it's just that pretty much within the last 3 or 4 days, I've come across this about 2 or 3 times. And therefore, I just wanted to get it off my chest. I know that it will do me absolutely no good for saying this, but nonetheless, there we are. Mr. Ogre, over to you. We can't hear you.
Well, I think it always does good. That was very eloquent of me. I think I said something profound too. I think it always does good to get something off your chest, even if the person that was involved, you know, and it doesn't hear this or never tunes in later and sees it, you know, in the subsequent upload. But it's good to say things like that. And I mean, we all need to hear these things because, you know, a lot of us can be guilty of that kind of debate, and it's disingenuous. With that said, I just want to thank everybody for being here. It's turning into a right old crew, isn't it, Brett? Seems like we got the first ranker. He usually shows up very fashionably late, but then we got the, I think we can pretty much say we got the common sense guy right here falling in the pocket with us. Just fine, Danny. Very happy about that, too. He's a wonderful addition. Always has something intelligent to say, and I just, for myself, for anyone listening, the reason it's been pared down, and believe me, not that I'm implementing any of the names that I mention right now into like bad things, but Zero Cool will be back. Logical Lion, I'm sure, will be back. We'll have Mad Dodge. We'll have Cabbage Patch Bastard. We'll have MC, JK. We'll have a lot of people. But for myself, and I know without even talking to the Brit about this, I think we did talk about it a few times, though, that it just, when you have a lot of people in and it just becomes a cacophony of noise and people waiting to talk and not listening because there's so many people, if you don't just wait to talk and keep in your head what you're going to say, you're going to forget about it and whatnot. It just became it wasn't working out. It wasn't, not only wasn't it fun for the Britisher and I, which is the ultimate goal for us, I believe, but it didn't seem to be as informative or as fun for you out there in the bar, as Captain Copile likes to call it. This is we're like the band playing softly in the background in a bar. So that's why things are the way they are. As we have guests come on, you know, the main crew will always just be there. There will be no more invites for folks to come on in these times, and it's not any disrespect. I'm not trying to even really explain myself or the Britishers' thought processes. I'm just telling you the way it seems to work best. If we keep it small and keep it with just the main crew on the nights when we have Matt Christensen will be this coming Monday, or guests like that, you know, it just makes it so much easier for us. And it makes it, as I said before, so much easier for you to watch and to follow. And so that's the way it's going to be. I hope that y'all enjoy that format in the future and that you're enjoying the way it is. Yeah, I understand that the Brit and I don't argue quite as much as we used to, and we don't shout quite as much. By we, I mean me. and other stuff. But in the end, how long can you sustain an Alex Jones type of ideal, even if it's at a lesser degree? Me, looking back at some things that some shows that have transpired in the future, in the past, I mean, I just decided that my future also needed to be a little more low key, a little bit more allowing people that are here to speak. I hope that's translating well. I hope that the folks gathered here to witness this show and that the panel can see that. Because why in the world would I invite everybody on? Why do I want to have Brit as a co-host if I look back and I see that 65, 70% of the time I was yakking? Well, I could just not invite anybody and call it the Ogre Show. It doesn't seem too interesting to me. It may be the greatest thing that ever touched humanity's thin, delicate skin, but who am I to say? All right, I know that was long and drawn out, so let me just say one more thing. I'm going to continue to say it. North Korea, you know, the boogeyman under the bed. There's a school of thought that would be conflict that says that humanity needs a boogeyman. They need this enemy, a common enemy. And then if they don't have this common enemy, they will manufacture one from within if necessary. That way that they can focus some of the bad things that are innately in every human being on this common enemy. And it can be a way of release. And remember, it doesn't matter if the common enemy is good, bad, or indifferent. It doesn't matter. It matters only that there's an enemy. Is North Korea this enemy? In my heart of hearts, dear viewer, yes. I'm not going to ask for any opinions here, but I am going to go out on a stretch and say that I think the British would stand with me with this. They're just slightly different than the terrorists with their holy weapon in their underpants. They're not really much to worry about until they do something. When something happens, let it happen. Should Trump be tweeting out about hell and brimstone and fire, rain, death, and whatnot? I don't think so. I'm not the president. I'm not going to tell him what to do, but I've always said it. I'm with Tucker Carlson. I'm with the Britisher on this. Calm down a little bit on the tweets, Prez. How about that, baby? Just do it for the Ogre. If you do, I promise I'll vote for you next time. So try not to worry about North Korea. Try to, if you are in this mindset, to break free from this conflict thinking that there needs to be some common enemy. There need be no enemy. We could all just look at each other for what is the product of that human being, the content of the character, I've heard it said. If we only look there and we don't see anything bad in that person, don't suspect. Let's not suspect. Let's as a whole, especially Americans that are, this is where it seems to be coming from right now. They're is visiting his ilk on us through his rhetoric and his saber rattling, and Trump and whatever. Our machine is responding in schoolboy fashion. How about let's just not respond? Keep the sanctions on. We don't have to be friends, but we don't have to really go around and say what would happen when we already know. And remember what already was mentioned earlier. If you break it, you buy it, it seems like, in this day and age. So we don't want to buy another country, do we? And be good to your friends. Be good to your family members. Be good to your loved ones. Be quick to say you're sorry. Be even quicker to accept an apology, especially when that thing your friend, your family member, your loved one has done seems to be so huge, you'll never be able to forget about it. Because constant viewers, at a time you think not, your friends, your family members, your loved ones, and your common enemy will depart from you.